Serving their community is who they are because they love where they live. REMAX 3D Real Estate is proud to bring you Heart of Farmersville, a video series dedicated to celebrating all the wonderfully great things about Farmersville, Texas. On every episode, Dennisha Denney will share Farmersville's story through the stories of the people who call Farmersville home. This is Heart of Farmersville.
Thank you so much for watching Heart of Farmersville. I asked Misty Weibold to come on the show because she has such a heart and soul for this community, but also because she has passion for the rich heritage that Farmersville has to bring. I can't wait for you to hear my conversation with Misty. Hey y'all, I'm Dennisha Denney, your host of Heart of Farmersville, and today we're sitting down at the Farmersville Heritage Museum with Misty Weibold. How are you today, Misty?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show today.
It's my pleasure.
I'm really excited that you asked me once, can we sit down and do this at the museum? And I said, well, we normally record at 12 stories. And then you sent me another text a little bit later and said, are you sure you don't want to do it in the museum? And I'm so glad that you pushed me on that. Or I guess let's say you encouraged me to come and sit down to do our conversation here in the museum. It is an incredible place. Just sitting in this room, you can feel the history and the love that has gone on in this community, and incredible people that grew up here and made their start here and went out into the world and did amazing things. So yes. I just want to say thank you, first of all, for inviting us to come in to do it here, but also I can see your heart and passion for the museum and for this community. Yes. So that's why I really wanted you to come on the show today.
Well, thank you. Anytime I could tell the stories about our rich history and the people that make this town so special, that's my heart. So I am a little bit passionate about the museum. So, but it's really more what makes the museum. Mm-hmm. It's not, the building itself is a historic structure. It was built by the railroads. It's one of the two remaining onion sheds that we have. And so the building itself is really special, but the contents inside are amazing.
Mm-hmm. They really are. When I walked in the door this morning, I was in awe that this is what it was on the inside.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm new to Farmersville. What are the onion sheds and what was their purpose?
Well, they were built by the railroad mm-hmm. to house all of the onions that we shipped around the United States. So that's how the name was coined, mm-hmm. onion sheds. And they were open pavilions, and the one across the street is indeed still open. And when this one was enclosed, the board at the time really wanted to preserve the integrity and the architecture of this particular building. So the floors are still original, much of the structure, and they just kind of worked around the existing structure so that you could still imagine maybe being here when the room was, or the shed was full of onions and the permeation and smell of onions and the rail cars would pull up on either side of the shed and they would load the onions. And at the peak of production, we were shipping 1,000 carloads of onions a year from Farmersville, Texas. So, our name, kind of tells the story of our history. But prior to onions, we also, we started in cotton in the early 1900s. And at the turn of the century, Farmersville was they were first in the state of Texas, the wealthiest per capita in the state of Texas at the turn of the century, and third in the United States. Is that incredible?
That is incredible.
And that's
right
because
here.
Of our agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
They call it the rich black soil.
Yes.
So it's very fertile and made us a very wealthy town at the turn of the century and has sustained us for many decades.
So is that why it's called Farmersville? Because of all of the farming? How did it
Well,
get its name? Do
you know, I think our name kind of preceded us a little bit, so maybe it would foretell the story. But the Farmersville actually began a couple of miles north of here in an area called Sugar Hill. And Brian and I, we did not plan this, but when we moved to Farmersville, we actually ended up in the home and the area which was called Urey Farms. And the Urey family and also Moses Jones were some of the founding families of Sugar Hill, which would become Farmersville. And we live on the property of Urey Farms.
How cool is that?
I know. Isn't that so cool?
I'm not surprised you found out the history, though.
Well, I kind of had a clue because our basement, which I know is very rare in Texas, is the original structure of the Urey house. So our basement dates back to 1846.
That is incredible.
So
have you had to do a lot to maintain it?
It's about, I think we have been told that the floors are still original, and about halfway up the walls are stacked limestone. And I believe that that's probably original structure. Beyond that point, it becomes brick. So it's almost all stone, so it's been preserved well.
I would love to see that.
No, well, you're welcome to
you
come.
You need to display pictures of that.
We give tours, but, I tell people it's special in the sense of the reference point, but not so much in the sense of what to look at. I mean, it is very interesting and it's beautiful to me.
Yes.
But it's just four walls in a basement.
Which is so rare for us to see that in Texas.
I know.
When people are moving here from the north, they're like, okay, well, we need this, and a basement. And we have to explain we don't have basements here, but it is because of our black land. And so I was curious what your structure is. So that makes sense why it's been preserved by being stone and brick underneath.
Yeah. So Brian and I moved from McKinney almost 8 years ago. And when we began in McKinney, or when we moved to McKinney, much of the characters that drew us to McKinney are here in Farmersville too. And when we first moved there, it was a larger town, obviously, but it was on the precipice of being a significantly growing city. But we had determined that our time there was, we thought just move on the outskirts of McKinney. And I had a store on the square called French Dressing for a number of years. And so we watched McKinney go from a sleepy town to the fastest growing city in the United States for several years. And so we watched it kind of morph and change. And one of the things that I thought was so beautiful about McKinney is that they really worked to preserve the historic downtown and some of the charm and the features that made it wonderful. I then moved my business to the cotton mill. And I love, as you can tell, I love historic buildings and things like that. And so when we started looking to move, we thought we would stay on the outskirts of McKinney. We had some idea, or Brian would say, I had some ideas of what I wanted in a home. And I wanted an older home, ranch style, maybe with just a little bit of land, a little bit of wiggle room. And so we began our search, and we weren't finding, what we wanted. And I shared with our realtor, I said, I want to tell you in advance, I apologize because I probably am going to be your worst client because I have certain things in my heart that I want in a home. And we have waited for a season to do this. And so let me just go ahead and apologize. And so we continued our search, but we hadn't physically looked at any properties. And so we really weren't finding what we wanted. And so I kept expanding, you know, radius.
You know this.
You totally know this as a realtor. So I kept expanding the search,
Yes,
you know,
going
a little
wider,
bit.
wider.
And so I decided I'm going to expand it out to Farmersville. And she said, now, Misty, do you want to go out that far? And I said, well, you know, because our life was in McKinney, right? And I said, well, let's just try.
Right.
What can it hurt? That'll be the furthest we go out, and you know, we'll still be close to McKinney in our life and all of that, and I can drive into town. This was my thinking.
Right.
And so we expanded the search, and I popped online one day, and this house popped up. And I thought, that looks intriguing. So I called our realtor, and I said, I think I'd like to go look at this house. And she said, okay, well, let me set up an appointment. Well, this was the first house that we were going to actually look at and walk through. And I said, and by the way, it's in Farmersville. So we'll start out and work our way in towards McKinney, you know. And so...
and she's probably
so
thinking, we'll just check this off the box.
Absolutely.
Let's just go out there to appease her.
And us too.
Right.
You know, my mother grew up here in Farmersville. She was raised by her grandmother. So I had reference points to Farmersville, but I had not been here. I knew of it and the things that my mom would talk about going after school to the McCraw Candy, which was here for almost 100 years. And she has very special memories of going and getting candy, because after they would run the candy production, then they would have remnants left over that they would give to the kids. So I knew of Farmersville.
Right.
And I told my mom, I said, we're going to go look at a house in Farmersville. And she said, you're what? I said, yeah, we're going to go. So long story short, we came out, drove out. And when we drove over the lake and Lake Lavon, you know, and of course I've done that many times. But I was thinking, this is nice, you know? So then we drove into town. We drove down Main Street, and you go clickety-clack over the red brick streets, and it just captures your heart. And I'm like, oh my. And so...
I hope we never change that. There's something magical about
Well,
the
let me
clickety-clack.
tell you, thanks to the Historic Society, our red brick streets were saved. So there was a
that's
time when
wonderful.
they, you know, meaning well to do modernization.
Yes.
There was a plan to remove the brick streets, and the Historic Society stepped in and said, hey, maybe we should rethink this. So I think our brick streets are here to stay. So
Well, thank you to the people who
absolutely,
stepped up to preserve
absolutely.
those.
So we went over the red brick streets and went out to the house, went down the long drive. And I looked over at Brian, and Brian kind of looked at me. And a really long story short, we fell in love. We felt at home. And little did I know, I'll cry.
Oh.
I'm a very
so
sentimental
sweet.
person.
Yes.
You know, little did we know the things that captured our heart at face value. I'm so sorry.
No,
The things the things that captured my heart at face value, the charm of the town. I love history, as you can see. I love historic architecture. You know, my business was on the historic square, and then I moved out to the cotton mill. Those things are appealing to me as a person. And of course, it was captured by the historic basement. I thought that was the coolest thing, that this 1968 house, ranch-style house, was built over the top of the basement. So all of those things were appealing, but I could have never dreamt the love that I would have for Farmersville. And it's so much more than just what you can see at face value. The friendships, the community, the passions of people in this town. It just you can't describe it until you experience it, you know?
Yes.
And I tell people that, and I loved living in McKinney, and I never thought my life would be elsewhere, quite frankly. But when we moved here, you know, for a short period of time, I was still McKinney minded and my errands, and I tended to go back. But it wasn't long before you just change. You kind of settle down a little bit. And then when you come home and you go over the lake and you go over the brick streets, you know, you're just home.
Yes.
And I just love all of that. I love that our hometown hero is the most decorated soldier of World War II. I'm very patriotic. And those things, I mean, you just can't define them, you know, until you experience them. I love that when I go into downtown that I can see the ghost mural on the left-hand side of the Reich Pharmacy, which was one of our original early settling families in the area. And Reich was very instrumental in preserving a lot of Farmersville's history. And they had the pharmacy for many, many years. And he would take all of the images and he would record information on the back of them. So much of what we even have in here in the museum is because of the Reich family. So I love that I can see just a hint of that mural as I go through town. I love that I can go to the doctor, go to the pharmacy, go pick up an auto part, and then go have a gourmet coffee, all in downtown Farmersville.
Isn't that awesome? That's what makes it part of home.
I know.
You don't have to go on the other side of the lake. You can do so much of it right here.
It's the quality of life. You know, it really is. And I know that, much like McKinney, that Farmersville is on the precipice of growth. We know that. And, you know, for those of us who have been drawn here for the small town, quaint feel, it's a little unsettling. We see, you know, the quick growth and changes in Princeton, and it's working its way,
Yes,
this direction. But I am confident that the quality and the things that make Farmersville so beautiful, the people that have gone before us and have made Farmersville what it is, that will be able to preserve that, because the people that are here are passionate about those things. And that's why it's important to me to tell those people's stories. And, you know, in 2019, when we began the development of the exhibits and I began researching, you know, because a lot of people, it was just common knowledge, all these, you know, Audie Murphy, and of course I knew about Audie Murphy, but many of the other stories I didn't know. So as I began to research for the exhibits, I was just amazed. And I would just have moments of puddles of tears, you know, as I read about certain people's lives and the things that they contributed to our town, and then just moments of sheer joy or excitement for something that I figured out, you know. And so
putting all
my sweet husband put up with me through that journey and was actually heavily involved. We pull each other into certain things. But anyway, it's just, I think that's one reason why I love to tell the stories and invite people and encourage them to come into the museum, because you can certainly be proud of Farmersville. And we have an amazing man in Audie Murphy, and the life that he lived and the things that he did. But we also have Gussie Nell Davis, who was the creator of the drill teams, the Texas drill teams that has gone worldwide and established the Kilgore Rangerettes. We have businesses such as the Farmersville Times that are century-plus businesses that are still going. And that says a lot to me for a little tiny town to have businesses that are century-old businesses. McCraw Candy was here for almost 100 years.
Wow.
And isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
Even they were sold to Hammond Candy, And Hammond still makes the taffy, still keeps the wrapper as it was, and the recipes are still the same. So it says to me, those kinds of things says a lot about the spirit of the entrepreneurial spirit and the quality of the people that are in Farmersville.
Yes. I love it. And I was going to say, it's the people. I know you were talking about growing and, as new people come in. And just like yourself, you came in from McKinney and you embrace the community and you embrace the history and the culture. And that'll continue to happen because people like you are continuing to share that history. And other people will have that same sense of pride. I know being down on the square, there's always so many events going on down at the square.
Oh, my gosh. Prolific. For a small town, we like to celebrate.
Yes, you do. And I love it. There's something going on all the
There's
time.
always something to celebrate.
Yes.
It's awesome.
And the people are so friendly that are walking down the streets and, just they have a smile on their face. They're happy to be here. And all the business owners have been so welcoming as well. But they all work together to make that environment for people.
I'll just touch on, we had an event called Shop Girls Day here at the museum this last fall, and we had dresses that were created to represent the business based on some historic photos that we had. And we had 12 participants to fabricate original dresses. Now, these are store owners. These are not, necessarily dressmakers. And we challenged them to give us something that we could look at made out of avant-garde materials that would have a couture element to it, and don't just give us anything.
Right.
And these are store owners; they're busy, and when the dresses started coming in, this was our first year at it. We didn't know what we would get.
Right.
They blew my mind. The creativity, the talent,
Yes.
the quality that was produced. It was just amazing.
I know, and you have two here in the museum.
Yes,
so
we
people need
do.
to come to the museum.
Absolutely.
and see
Yes,
the two
we do.
that you have here.
Yeah.
Oh. Can we talk about what it's like to be the mayor's wife for just a second?
Yes. It's busy. I think that, what do you want to know? Let's go with that.
I don't know. What's your favorite story? Do you have a favorite story about being the mayor's wife?
Uh-huh.
Your husband was so sweet. He's coming on the show later in the month, and so, but he was like,
You notice he threw me out here first.
Exactly. He's like, you really don't want me. You need my wife, Misty. So I'm so glad he recommended you and that you sat down with us today.
Thank you.
But I can tell the two of you have such a passion for this community.
We have always. So I've cried on camera already. So you kind of get a feel for my heart. Brian has the same heart. And he never, when we moved to Farmersville, none of these things were ever planned or intended.
The best things aren't.
But Brian and I have always, we do things on our own. We are passionate about certain things that are not necessarily the other's cup of tea. But more times than not, we really work together to support each other, and he supports me any way that I ask, whether it's the year of the museum and anything that I would need, and I try to do that same thing for him. And I think the thing that we have discovered, we have always done service-oriented things, but not in a civic capacity. Mm-hmm. And so it's a whole new world. And there are ups and downs in that. But at the end of the day, it is such a privilege. It really is. And see, I'm going to cry again.
I love your heart.
But it really is. The things that it affords us to do, to bring support and to help people fulfill the passions that are in their heart, and to do what we can to bring those things about, to do what we can to preserve the history of Farmersville and the things that make it special. And So it's wonderful. You know, it's not to say that it doesn't have its hardships and sometimes even hurtful things. But the big picture, it's wonderful. And it is certainly, it's just an honor. It really is. And it's a privilege. It's very humbling, quite frankly.
Oh, I'm
It really
sure.
is.
I'm sure.
During Farmersville Lights, you know, the Christmas. So that was 2020 was the year of Christmas. So to light the parkway. But, you know, after it was all lit and, you know, so I pulled Brian into the museum. Brian pulled me into, you know, wrapping lights. I'm almost at professional level for wrapping Christmas lights on trees.
On trees.
Oh, Lord. But, you know, after it was all said and done, you know, we would drive the parkway in the evenings. It almost sounds a little creepy. But
It sounds magical to me.
and it was magical. But you know, we would go and would park, because the thing that was so cool about the parkway is that you could drive it if you wanted to, but you could also walk it.
Yes.
And get out and experience and run under the arches. And we would go, we'd go by and we had to check things and reset things every couple of days, and because it was walkable, and you know, inadvertently people would actually, you know, accidentally unplug things and that kind of stuff. So we'd have to go back, you know, and reset. But we would sit there, and I'm going to tell on him. I mean, we would just tear up, you know, just watching families enjoy themselves and having quality of life, and, you know, little ones and dogs running and playing through the Christmas arches and just loving life, you know? So
Enjoying
it's
what's
those
most
kinds of
important.
experiences that you just can't, you just, it's a privilege to get to experience those kinds of things. And we're becoming sister cities with Holtzville, France, with Audie Murphy as the, you know, the tie between us. And so it's things like
incredible.
that that's just, you just can't almost put into words.
I cannot think of a better family to be representing Farmersville. Like, your hearts are so
thank you.
strong and so deep
thank
for the
you.
community, and you're allowing all of the legacies of all the history to carry forward. And so you're like, your persona is so infectious. Like, I'm
Well.
sitting here and it's like, I love Farmersville.
Do you want to
and I love it
volunteer?
even more. I know. I'm like, sign me up. Where do I jump in to help you? Because you and your husband are going to be the people that help lead that charge to keep Farmersville with that passion and culture that we have today. So
Well, we
thank
just
you
want to
for
be
that.
good stewards, you know, of the things that we're entrusted with. But it's not about us, you know.
Right.
When I look back at, and I know of all of the longstanding people that have served this community very quietly, honestly, very unassuming individuals, businessmen and women
Yes.
who have continued to support, whether it's volunteering on a board or at the school, or funding certain projects, and they don't do it for recognition. And I won't call them out, but you know, there are a lot of people like that in this town that as we have got more involved, we really see the heart of the people who want to ensure that Farmersville is, you know, always a special place to live. And I think that's a beautiful thing. You know, 20 years, 30 years of service, and that's incredible when you think about it,
Right.
because it's not always easy putting yourself forward. Not that you're doing it for your own benefit, but when you put yourself in a position like that, you also put yourself in a vulnerable position to be criticized and judged. And so, you know, when you think about going through those things, and people who have served in those positions for 20 and 30 years and so on, it's admirable. And I think about those people, you know, when I feel, oh, woe is me, you know, I'm like, look at this, look at what these people have done. You know, I got this, I can do this.
I can do this. Absolutely. Well,
So-
you are doing a great job at it. Okay,
thank
Misty,
you.
I said at the end of the show I was going to ask
Okay.
you to pick a number between 1 and 20, and it's going to be
Okay.
your final question, and it's a random question, and there are no wrong answers. So tell me a number between 1 and 20.
20.
Okay, number 20. What is the smartest thing you have ever done?
The smartest thing. Marry Brian Weibold.
I love it. That like sums up everything.
I told him I was going to marry him straight away.
Oh,
so.
that's funny. How long have you guys been together?
This year will be 25 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
That
you.
is so exciting. I
Thank
love
you.
that. After 25
He's my best
years.
friend. He's my best friend.
It's the only way for it to be.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Misty, thank you so much for sitting
Thank
down with
you.
me today. It's been such a pleasure. I'm so glad I've gotten to know you, and I can't wait to work with you on projects.
Awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Heart of Farmersville. This video series, which is designed to celebrate Farmersville, Texas, is spearheaded by REMAX 3D Real Estate.